Let me show you how you can achieve this color fill animation for text in Squarespace just with CSS. In order to achieve this, we need to do three things. We need to create a background gradient. We need to set the background gradient as the color of the text, and then we need to animate that gradient so that it shifts from one color to the next. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to be using an H1 as my example, but feel free to use any other type of heading that you like. Now, the first thing we need to do is create the gradient. In order to do this, we're going to be using three different background properties. The first one is going to be a background image, and with this, we're going to be creating the gradient itself. Now, because I want to have a vertical division between one color and the other, I'm going to be setting this to 90 degrees. Then the first color I'm going to be using is black, just like the color of the font. And then the second one is going to be a dark tan color. So I already have the hex code here, which is what I'm going to be using. And now, because I don't really want this to look as a gradient, I want it to be a solid division between both colors, I'm going to be using a little trick. I'm going to set the endpoint of the first color as the same starting point for the second color. So what that's going to look like is 50% and 50%. So that the black color goes from 0% all the way up to 50% of the container. And then the second color starts at that same 50% line and then goes all the way out to 100% of the container. Now, before we implement the other two properties that we need to finalize the gradient, I want to explain what the logic is behind the animation. So the goal is to have one of these colors to cover the entirety of the heading on page load. And then after a certain time passes, the second color is going to take over and it's going to cover the whole text as well. Now, as you can see on the screen right now, I only have half of the text in one color and half of the text in another color. This is because the background size default is 100%. So what we're going to do is we're going to make that gradient bigger than the text itself. We're actually going to make it twice as big because we have two colors. And we want each of the colors to be 100% of the heading through the background size property, setting that to 200%. Now, right now, it looks like the whole gradient turned black. But what really happened is that now that 50% of the gradient is 100% of the heading. And then we have another 50%, which is outside of view, that is the dark tan color, and it's also 100% of the heading. So we have 100% black and 100% dark tan. And to be able to shift between one color or the other, we're going to be using background position. So let's go ahead and implement that next. And we're going to decide which side is going to be our initial color. Now, in my case, I want the dark tan color to be the first one we see. So I'm going to switch the default position of left for right. So if I use in here the keyword of right, you're going to see how now we see the dark tan half of the gradient and the black half is all the way out towards the left side of the screen where we cannot see it. Okay, so with this in place, now that we know how it works, how everything moves and where everything is located, we can go ahead and just clip this into the text. To do this, we need two more properties. So the first one is going to be background clip. We're going to set this one to text, and as the word state, this is pretty much going to clip the background into the text. Now, the problem is that I'm seeing this as black, not because my gradient moved, but because I haven't removed the actual font color that this element has. In order to remove that, we need the second property. So this one has a little prefix here of WebKit, there we go. And then we have text, fill, color, and we're going to set this one to transparent. So what this is going to do is remove the color of the font and allow us to see the background that we just clipped to the text. And with all of this in place, all that's left to do is create the animation. We're going to be using keyframes for that, and we're going to give our animation a name. It can be anything that you want. I'm just going to call this one fill. Now, for this specific animation, we only need to have one step, which is going to be the final one. So we can either use 100% to target that last step of the animation, or we can simply use the keyword to. Then it's just a matter of modifying the alignment of the gradient. So if I'm starting with the background position of right, I want this to animate towards the left. And so basically I'm going to have the dark tan moving towards the side, and then the black color is going to come in. So let's set that up here, background, position, left. And now to be able to link our H1 with the animation, we need to bring in the animation property here at the top. And then first we need to call out the actual animation we want to use, which in my case is called fill. If you use a different keyword, just make sure to change it here too. Then we need to set up the timing of the animation. So the amount of time that's going to pass between one color shift and the next. I want to keep this fairly fast, so let's make it maybe like 1.3 seconds, something like that. Now the next thing here, and this is important, is to set the direction of the animation. Because I don't want this to go back and forth into the initial state again, I want the final state to stick, I'm going to be using the keyword of forwards. Last but not least, we need to set the delay. This is going to be the time that the animation is going to wait after page load before it runs. I'm going to be setting this to something like 1 second, and then we're going to test things out. You can see here automatically that after I disable and enable the animation, I see it running again. So you don't really need to refresh the page every time to see what the final result is going to look like. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the live side. Refresh this and see what people are going to see. So there you go. We have that H1 that just waits a second, and then we have the animation running. I actually think that this is a little bit too fast. I think I wanted to wait just a tad longer before running. So let's keep this as 2 seconds instead. We're going to run this again. And now after 2 seconds, we can see how the whole text is going from that dark tan gradient color into the black one. And there you go. That's how you can quickly create this kind of animation for text in Squarespace. If you like this video, make sure to give it a big thumbs up or leave me a comment down below. In any case, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.